the narrative and the booth piece, which Matt, this is all you, buddy.
All right. So I touched on this a little bit, but I'd say, so brand experience framework, right? So let me just give you a quick framework. I've talked about this before. Number one is why. It's asking yourself, why are we exhibiting? Why are we here? Why are we at this event? You need a real why. Because we've always gone is not a real why. It could be the why, but it's not a real why, right? Customer. You need a really good breakdown of who your customer or who the customers are, right? Who is exactly at this event that you are engaging? What do they mean to you? And what do you mean to them? You have to have that real understanding. That's two. The third is brand. Your brand. What makes you unique? What makes you different? What's your vibe? What's your point of view? Who are you as a company? That's the third. The fourth is going to be goals and objectives. You got to have goals and objectives. So if you have just those four things, your why, your customer, the brand, goals and objectives, if you can dial into those four things, so much is possible to go execute the right way. So now what we're talking about is taking it a step further, and it's saying, okay, themes, concepts, ideas, story, narrative. You're hearing me talk about this ad nauseum. The trade show floor is a sea of parody. It is a bunch of trade show booths that look similar, white background, nice layout, decent structure, a lot of nice trade show booths. The companies that win are the companies that show up with themes, the ones that show up with ideas, the ones that are telling their audience a story about them or a story about their customer that they are seeing empathy in and understanding. So, two questions I think you want to be asking yourself in this process is, what should people walk away knowing? What do you want your customer after an engagement with you or just walking by, but more so with an engagement? What do you want them to walk away with? Choose one thing. There may be five. I get it. There's probably 10, but choose one. What is the most important one? If you could have a 30-second conversation with somebody as the most important conversation, what would be that one thing you're going to tell them? And then two is, how should they feel? How do you want someone feeling when they leave? Like, I always think about this podcast as an example and this live show. How do I want people to feel when they leave this podcast? And I always think to myself, I want them to think that I give a shit about the information that we are giving to them, that it means something, that they can take it and go actionably use it in their life. So that is something that I feel about this podcast, right? So you have to think about that in your trade show booth. How do you want your customer to leave feeling? It could be you just want them leaving feeling happy. You want them feeling like, wow, that's the coolest brand in home security that I've ever seen. Like, whatever, just decide what that is. And then with the information that we just kind of walk through, you're building themes, you're building concepts, you're building ideas, you're creating a story. Then you can go design a trade show booth. Stop designing a trade show booth before you have all of this information. And if you're working with somebody that is not asking you this stuff and is start designing you a trade show booth, you're going backwards. You need this information first. The design of the booth then follows. And then that is how you go execute, in my opinion.
I love it, Matt. I don't think you've ever told me this whole idea of, you think about this in the podcast all the time, right? Of like, how you want people to feel, because it's real, right? Like any kind of engagement that you're doing, whether it's a trade show booth, whether it's a brand experience, I think about it when it comes to whether it's a conversation, right? Like I just think about it when it comes to networking or anything like that. This idea of what should people walk away knowing and how should they feel is the key to empathy, right? Like at the end of the day, at a very base level, everybody wants to feel seen to a certain extent, right? So like, I would say start there, like how do you ensure that they were like, oh, this team, this person, they really get me. They really get us. And then how do you build upon that? And I love, man, I know that I've said this in past podcasts, but this idea when it comes specifically to trade show booth and brand experience strategy, this idea of person needs to process all this visual information, be like, and then walk up to someone and be like, what's the deal with this thing?
Yeah.
And engineering it so that the deal with this thing is that point of view we just worked on. That to me really feels like, man, you're really doing it at a black belt level, man.
I think what you're talking about, I think this is like utopia to me. And I hope this happens for somebody, right? Is essentially your customer walks into your exhibit space and they're talking with somebody and they're like, hey, why is your booth a carnival theme? Why are you Barnum's and Bailey? Why are you this theme? It's a great question. You're eliciting curiosity. You're garnering attention. You're standing out by somebody walking in your booth and asking you, why are you a tequila bar? Why are you a carnival circus? Like whatever the theme is, It's gaining attention. It's standing out. There's so much going on. And the utopian, like the big goal is to be able for the answer as to the why has to do with the problem that you solve for them. So they are like, oh, that's awesome. That makes sense. And I think that's easier said than done. But to me, it's the goal. To me, it should be the goal. And again, a lot of people go to trade shows, people know who they are, right? So you're not going to get people being like, oh, why are you this? But you still may, even if someone knows who you are. Like I had people that I know in our industry say to me, Matt, why is your guys' booth? What's Hotel Rockaway? That's what everybody kept saying. What's Hotel Rockaway?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, funny you should ask. And I would say, hey, it's a boutique hotel, a boutique experience, right? Right. And you jump into the spiel, intentional design, personalized. I mean, what do you get at a boutique hotel? They are always intentionally designed. They're a little wacky. They're a little different. They're niche. They're specific, right? So it's that intentional design. And for us, if someone says, what's intentional design? I just start walking them through story, theme, narrative. We are not just going to design you something just to design it, right? And then you go to personalized service. I would hope that at a boutique hotel had personalized service. They're typically less number of rooms, smaller hotels, yada, yada, yada. So
what's the last piece of that moniker? Because I think it's just as important, man. It was intentional design, personalized service, and
the sleepless nights,
no sleepless nights.
The experience. It's getting the experience at a hotel like that. Yeah, that's a good
right.
point.
It's the idea that as an event marketer, all you're doing is stressing out all day long. If we can take this idea, is the booth going to look beautiful off your plate? You can sleep well. That is your client being seen, being heard.
Yeah.
Right. So like to me, that idea of like intentional design, that's about you. Personalized service, it's about us. And then no sleepless nights. That's like, oh man, if I got that at a conference, that's what I want as an event marketer for sure.